Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jess, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about the books that I read in January and my February TBR. If you guys watch more of my vlogs, you'll know that I love to read. I'll read anything from romance to thrillers and anything in between, and really I'm more of a mood reader. So I wanted to go over everything that I've read so far, what I liked, and what I anticipate reading this month. My ultimate reading goal for the year is 53 books, and if you don't already know, I think I've said this on some of my vlogs, but reason is because I was aiming for 52, which is a book a week basically, and one of my friends is also doing that, so as a joke I went up to 53. So 52, 53, who cares, but the goal is 53. So I'll start by going through all of the books that I read in January. I do have everything on Goodreads, so if you're interested in following my Goodreads, everything is down below, so you can always check it out. And I do have my reading challenge there, so you can also check that out. But number one book that I read this month was The Green Mile by Stephen King. I have had this book on my shelf for a couple of years now. I want to say like at least 5 years, maybe more. And I bought this to buddy read with somebody, and then I just like never got around to it, and we never like kept up with reading it together. And so I finally decided like now is the time to dive into it. I was really craving more of a thriller. Unfortunately, this was not a thriller, and I keep finding that I'm doing that when it comes to Stephen King novels. I keep thinking I'm going to go into a thriller, and then I don't do enough research about the actual book, and then it's not a thriller. But I still really loved this book. There was a good chunk of it that I almost considered, I was kind of getting over like a certain portion of the book because there was a lot to do with this one particular mouse, and I didn't really at the time understand why that was so important. But if you know the story, you know how important it is. They really dive into it a lot in the book. There's also a movie called The Green Mile, and they don't really touch on the mouse nearly as much. So when other things happen later down the line with this mouse or like in the story, it means so much more because you have so much more of an emotion toward the mouse. So point is that I fell in love with the characters. I finished this book on the plane ride to Washington, and I was in tears. It was so amazing. I loved every second of it. So highly recommend. I gave it 5 stars. And then we watched the movie together, myself and Ryan, and we also loved the movie. Obviously, they changed a few things here and there because the movie is always going to be a little different from the book, but I really enjoyed both of them. So 5 stars for me. Directly after that, I read Powerless by Laura Roberts. No, not Laura Roberts, Lauren Roberts. I keep getting that mixed up. But I loved this book. This one is a little bit more like coming of age type vibe, I guess you could say. There was a lot of romance in it, but not necessarily like a lot of spice, which I personally really liked because I find that in a lot of romance books, it goes directly into like more of like the spice, and it just makes it so that the characters don't feel as like emotionally tied to me personally. I like these types of like YA books where you get a lot more emotion from the characters rather than like physical, like whatever's going on. But basically this almost kind of gives Hunger Games vibes. It's about a character who lives in a world where there are some people who have powers, and then there are some people who don't have powers. Those are ordinaries. And we find that our main character is an ordinary, but she's keeping that a secret because ordinaries are not allowed in this area. And she ends up having to go through these trials essentially. So it's this whole storyline about her going through the trials, meeting the royal family, and it's such a fascinating book and such a beautiful world. I'm really excited because the next one is supposed to be coming out soon. So I think this year, I think early this year, in fact. So I'm very excited. I really want more of these characters, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. So if you can't tell already, I gave that one 5 stars as well. I really loved it. I also should preface that my star system, like I have to have the right gut feeling about a 5 star to give it a 5 star. Otherwise it's a 4 if I really enjoyed it. A 3 is like something that I enjoyed and I would recommend, but like I forget about the storyline and the characters pretty much immediately as I close the book. And then I don't think I've really given anything a 2 or 1 star, only because if I'm getting to that point where I'm just like not really enjoying it, I'm going to DNF it. So I'm not very serious about my star rating. I don't do like point whatever, but you know, roughly speaking, I will be harsh against a 4 and a 5, if that makes sense. So yeah, this one was a 5 star for me though. It actually took me a while to pick up another book after this one because I was enjoying this one so much that I missed the characters, and I just like, I couldn't stop reading it. I was visiting my parents in Washington and my whole family in Washington, and I couldn't put it down. So that's how much I loved it. While I was reading both The Green Mile and Powerless, I was actually listening to Daisy Hates the Great Undoing, which is the 4th book in the series, but the second Daisy Hates book, if that makes any sense. So the way that the Magnolia Parks universe goes is it's a Magnolia Parks book, then a Daisy Hates book, then Magnolia Parks, then Daisy Hates again. So I've read the first two. I listened to the second Magnolia Parks, so the third book on audiobook, and this was the fourth one. Also decided to read on audio or like listen on audiobook. The reason I chose to do audiobooks for these ones are only because the first two books were like good, but I felt like there was so much back and forth that I kind of was getting bored reading them. I was giving them 3 stars because I was bored. And what I found was with the audiobooks, they had 2 different people reading them, and there was a lot more emotion and like almost like scenes, or like, I don't know, almost like I was watching a TV show rather than reading a book. And so I actually really enjoyed it a lot over audiobook. If you guys are also Spotify premium subscribers, they are on Spotify premium for free. Premium for free, you know, you pay, but you get it. So, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I personally like the Daisy Hates books more than the Magnolia Parks books. In this series, you get characters like all over the universe constantly. So just because you're reading a Daisy Hates book doesn't mean you're not going to see Magnolia Parks. It's just a lot less. You're following Daisy Hates and like this crew of people. But I just like her story a little bit more than I like Magnolia Parks' story. So, but I did enjoy that one a lot. I think I ended up giving it, I gave it 4 stars, and I'm really excited to see what happens. There's going to be 2 more books in the whole series. One Magnolia Parks book actually is just being released, and then one more Daisy Hates. I don't know when that one's going to be released, but because I loved the audiobook experience for these, I think I'm going to go for audiobooks for these ones as well. The next on the list that I read was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I've been seeing this one all over social media for quite a while now. I don't remember when it was released, but it's been a long time. And the second that it was released, everybody was raving about it. I knew that I was going to have to read it at some point soon. And I really did enjoy it. I think that it was a good book. And I don't know, again, if I was kind of like hungover from Powerless, because this was the next book that I read after Powerless, like physically read rather than like listening on audiobook. And I enjoyed it. But as the title suggests, none of this is true. Like it's a story where you're not really sure where to believe. Basically, it's about 2 women who are birthday twins. They meet each other on their 45th birthdays. They find out that they were born on the exact same day in the exact same hospital. And one of the women is a podcaster. The other one has a crazy story, and they decide to make a podcast together. But the podcaster finds herself in her very own true crime story instead. So it is very interesting. I think that the way that they structured the book was interesting as well, because it's kind of like Netflix documentary-esque. And so it's very much like shows you what the scenes would look like and all of that. So it was actually very interesting in that sense. And you do get strung along the whole time. You want to like learn more, but it's just such a different take on this genre, I guess. The only thing about it, and the reason I didn't give it 5 stars, was that the ending just kind of left me, I don't know, like questioning, I guess. I wasn't sure what things were true and what things weren't, and I felt like not really satisfied with that ending personally. I just felt like there's no clear direction. I would have enjoyed if the ending would have been like, oh my god, like this is what actually happened or something like that. But the ending, the last chapter, just makes you question everything all over again and just leaves you like wondering. And I just didn't love that, I guess, which is funny because you'll see why in my next sort of like talking about the next book. But yeah, for that reason, I ended up giving it 5 stars. I thought it was really good. I still think that I would recommend it to a lot of people, but for me, it just wasn't a 5 star. But the last book that I read in January was Rabbit Hole by Kate Brody. So I talked a bit about this book on my vlogs, but basically this book is a book written by an author who is one of my friend's sister-in-laws. It's my friend's sister-in-law. She wrote the book. And so I wanted to order the book, pre-order it just to support her. And the synopsis seemed pretty interesting. I wasn't sure 100% if I was going to love it. And I was a little nervous to read this one only because I wanted to tell my friend how I was going to like it, obviously. So I was nervous to be like, oh, I actually hated it, you know, but I loved this one. This is basically about a main character whose sister disappears, and 10 years later, her dad commits suicide, and she's trying to kind of figure out what happened. And she ends up finding a lot of her dad's paperwork and like notes and things like that on his office desk, and ends up going down very similar rabbit holes that her dad was going through, trying to understand what happened to her sister, trying to understand what happened to her own dad, all of those kinds of things. And I thought that the book itself was fascinating. I think it's funny because for the reasons that I didn't love the ending of None of This Is True, I loved the ending of Rabbit Hole. The ending doesn't really leave you with answers. It just leaves you like in this same rabbit hole as the main character. But because of the nature of the book, I think I enjoyed Rabbit Hole a lot more. I don't think it's a book that needed to have a resolution to certain aspects of the book, but it did leave me with resolution for the main character. So for that reason, I gave this one 5 stars. I think that it was also one of those things where it's like life doesn't always leave you with all of the answers. And I think that that was like a really cool and like fascinating way to write the book. So I really loved it. I was nervous because I thought it was going to be a thriller. Then I thought it was going to be like, I don't know, something else about like obsession. And it ended up just being, again, a big, huge rabbit hole. So I really, really, really loved this one. So those were all of the books that I read in January. I think I was pretty satisfied with that. I read 5 books in the month, which I know that there are a lot of people who read like 10, 20 books in a month, which I wish that I could be that person sometimes, but I read slow and I have a full-time job. So unfortunately, usually 5 is about to where I get to in any given month. I have quite a few books that I want to read. I mean, literally I have like 500 books on my want to read shelf on Goodreads. So if you ever want to check that out, I always put books on there that I'm interested in reading. But what I want to read in February, I have it all listed out here. So first off, I want to try reading Frankenstein. Reason being is that I just feel like I don't go for a lot of classics. In like elementary and middle school, went to a school that was all in Spanish. So a lot of the classics that I read were like Spanish classics or something along those lines. So I didn't get a chance to read a lot of classics as a kid. So Frankenstein I thought would be a really cool book. It's also like not super long and I just want to try it out. I thought that it would be a really cool one. And I think I like don't really know the story very well. Like it's a classic that I have no understanding about. And from what I understand, a lot of like the imagery and like the way that it's portrayed on media is not actually at all accurate to the book. So I'm really intrigued to see how it turns out. The next one is The Maid by Nita Prose. This is one that has been on my TBR for quite a while. I did read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and I think The Maid I just never got around to because I thought that it would be similar, I guess. But I was walking around with P around my neighborhood and there's a little free library and it was there. So I finally picked it up and I thought, why not give it a shot? I have been meaning to read this for a while. I've heard really great things about it. And I heard that it's definitely different than The Housemaid. Like it's still like a maid and a murder, but in very different ways. So I'm very excited to read that one. The next one is 28 Summers by Ellen Hilderbrand. And I honestly can't remember what this one is about either. I did read one Ellen Hilderbrand a while back. I want to say like 2 years ago now. And that one was so good. I really, really loved it. I really like the style of her writing. I feel like it's one of those like writing styles that I just like don't want to put down. And because of the vibes of like Nantucket and all of that kind of idea, it just like kind of transports me into like the springtime, which I'm really excited because we're starting to get into spring, even though it's raining today, but we're getting into like spring vibes. So I was really excited about this one. It's another one that I actually found in the same little free library by my house. So I figured I'd pick it up, but I also got it on Kindle so I could read it either way. But this one is sort of like a secret love affair or something along those lines from what I understand. I don't really know what it's about, but I'm really excited to read it. I just am looking for those like Nantucket vibes. There's always something a little bit like eerie in Ellen Hilderbrand's books too, so I'm hoping for something along those lines. Then the next one I want to read is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I've heard a lot about this one. It's also been on my Libby app for so long and I keep pushing it out because I haven't really, like in the wintertime, I wasn't in the mood for a romance. I was in the mood for like thrillers and that kind of thing. But again, as we get into the springtime, me being a mood reader, I'm excited for a romance. So this one is not in Rome, Italy. It's Rome, Kentucky. And from what I understand, it's like a pop star of some kind who finds herself in this like small little town and ends up meeting some guy who is in this small town. And then they have a romance. So it's like the perfect mix. I think it's something that I would personally really, really like. I love those kinds of books. And so I'm really excited about this one. And again, it has amazing reviews. I hear that everybody likes it. I know that there's a second that follows like The Bodyguard or something like that, but I just don't think, I don't love I don't know why, but I don't love like spin-offs with other characters from that same book. It's just not really a thing that I personally enjoy. I get too attached to the characters and I just always ends up that the second book I don't enjoy. So I don't know that I'll read the second one, but I guess I should read the first one before I like conclusively tell you what I will do. And I could always read it in the future. But for now, we want to read When in Rome. The last one that I want to read read this month is The Fury by Alex Michaelides. And honestly, I could not tell you what it's about. I read both of Alex Michaelides' other books. Those ones are The Silent Patient and The Maidens. I have noticed that he puts a lot of like Greek mythology in his books, which is not my favorite thing, but I really want to read this one. From what I understand, there's some sort of like set of friends that go to a Greek island and then there's a murder on the island. So it definitely feels a little bit more like whodunit Clue vibes, but I don't want to read too much into it because I don't want to spoil anything for myself. So I'm going to tell myself that that's what it's about. And then if it's different, I will definitely update you guys. But I want to read that one. I got it on my Libby app recently. That one's a new release. I think it was just released, yeah, January 16th. So very new. Also, it's a shorter one. It's like under 300 pages. So that will be a good one to read too. So those are the 5 books that I'm hoping to get through throughout the month of February. I'm really excited because I feel like I have a good mix of books, like depending on what I'm feeling like reading, whether it's a little bit more of like a spooky or like a thriller or a little bit more of a romance or something in between, like 28 Summers. I kind of have a little bit of everything in there. So I will definitely update you guys as to how I'm liking them. I often like to talk about the books that I'm reading in my vlogs. So if you don't already watch my vlogs, definitely check them out. But otherwise, I'll hopefully do another reading wrap up as well. So you guys will see it there. That's all I have for you guys for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if there's anything that you guys do want to see or anything you want updates on, let me know. I might start doing like reading vlogs and stuff like that too. So we shall see. But I'm trying to like delve into something a little new. So thank you guys again. I appreciate every single one of you and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.